So now I'd like to invite Phillip Hirsch to speak to us. Phillip is an Emeritus Professor of Human Geography at the University of Sydney, and he's now based in Thailand and also affiliated with the Regional Centre for Social Science and Sustainable Development at Chiang Mai University. Phillip works on questions of environment, development and agrarian change in Thailand and the Mekong region. Some of his recent books include Powers of Exclusion, Land Dilemmas in Southeast Asia with Derek Hall and Tanya Lee, and The Mekong, a socio-legal approach to river basin development, which is quite relevant to this current project, with EarthScan. And he's also recently published the Routledge Handbook of Environment in Southeast Asia that I'm sure many of you are consulting chapters from in our courses. So I'll hand over to Phillip.
Or have written chapters for it.
Yeah, equally.
And Christian, for your talk as well. I'm starting to think as I sort of hear the talks that we're dealing with rupture as the elephant in the parable of the blind man and the elephant. We're all sort of touching bits of it and perhaps seeing different things, but maybe by the end of the day, hopefully we'll miraculously regain our sight and see the whole. I guess I came at this part of the workshop and the talk today from Sengo's invitation to send along a paper that was relatively recent that I'd written that connected with Rupture, and I try to think of the theme that I'd use as a basis for a paper that most closely resembled the idea of Rupture, because as you'll have gathered, Rupture is an evolving concept for all of us. I think more generally it's an evolving concept, and we're still working and thinking through it. So the theme that I came up with that's closest is that of fragmentation, but putting it alongside with the kind of dialectic idea of rupture, of nature society transformation, putting it alongside integration. And I'll explain what I mean then. I try to think also about how the idea of rupture may move us collectively, but also myself in sort of maintaining interest in this project beyond the ways I'd looked at the sort of material object to our study, that is dams and their impacts in the past. So how does it move, for example, beyond simply studying the impact, the social impact or the environmental impact on dams? How does it move beyond what many of us have written over a number of years with respect to conflict produced by dams? How does it even move beyond more sort of encompassing, wide-ranging approaches like political ecology, which many of us, an area in which many of us work, and indeed within which we're situating, at least what is partly situating Rupture. So what is it that Rupture brings? I found that Christian's work, even though the framing of Rupture is perhaps at a different level and with a different research agenda, is very helpful in a number of ways. One is the idea of Rupture as a moment. Some of us have talked about Rupture as a tipping point. Some of us don't really like that idea so much, but as a moment where, as you say, both opportunities and risks multiply. Things disappear and new things emerge with regard to property, citizenship, but also more generally in terms of nature-society relations. So the idea of rupture is something breaking apart, hence it's my immediate linkage with the idea of fragmentation, but also reassembling, being reconstituted, but in new and different ways. So this idea of being able to study a moment in time, but also perhaps to make it concrete a place in space. And this is also, I think, as we have developed the research project we're embarking on, the reason why we chose something very sort of concrete and material, like large dams, because they are things that happen in place and time, and of course last over time, and their effects spread out over space, but nevertheless we can identify them as objects of study. One question this raises then is, to what extent is Rupture significant in itself, and to what extent is it simply a convenient way to be able to focus on these moments in place and time? So how do we see the difference between rupture as an exceptional expression of something happening compared to rupture, compared to things that happen incrementally, which may be equally significant but less visible and a bit more difficult to sort of focus on. So that, again, that's, I think, something where Jonathan, what you're talking about is the everyday, your model painting, the everyday, the plowing of the land and the herding of the sheep is the things that happen incrementally, but it's the falling to earth or Hirsch that's the point we can focus on. So, yeah, this idea of temporality and spatiality that come with the idea of moments and places. So turning then to the idea of rupture as fragmentation. In the piece that I submitted, it's quite a short article. In fact, it's a response article to responses to an article that had written previously in Political Geography. It's one of these sort of dialogues within a journal that look. The original article was looking at shifting geopolitics around Mekong Dam. So it was very specifically concerned also with our interest in dams for this project. But my interest in this sort of dynamic or dialectic between integration and fragmentation has been produced, as I've written about elsewhere, has been produced by concern with the dominant discourse around integration. And in the Mekong, the region, Mainland, Southeast Asia, where we're working, there are many dimensions of this, but I think there are two very interesting parallel dimensions. One is this discourse on regional economic integration, the Greater Mekong sub-region, a sort of neoliberal dream comes from the NEB and elsewhere, and which I know some of you in this room are even working on for your PhD projects of regional economic integration and its local effects. And the other dimension of integration is what happens more specifically with regard to the Mekong, not so much as a sort of metaphoric development space, which is what the Greater Mekong sub-region refers to, but the Mekong actually as a river basin being managed for its water, its hydroelectric potential, and so on. And this is the discourse and practice around integrated water resource management, what François Moll calls one of these nirvana concepts. The idea that we can maximize or optimize social outcomes around a material object such as a river or its basin by taking an integrated approach, a whole of basin approach instead of a fragmented approach. So these seem to be two very sort of positive ideas about integration. So the questions that are arising, well, what do these produce? And when we look at dams and hydropower, my interest is in the fragmentations that they produce. And the fragmentation can be understood, I think, best, or at least first and foremost, with regard to some sort of basic ideas about how rivers operate in relation to people who depend on them for their livelihoods. So if we think about river concepts such as connectivity, what does connectivity mean, and how is that fragmented by dams and hydropower? So there's continuity between the people and the river, the dependence on the river. There's biophysical continuity between the river and its floodplain. In a monsoonal river like the Mekong, the immense productivity of the river in terms of fisheries, its agriculture, livelihoods, is based on the fact that there's continuity in terms of nutrients as the river spills over onto the floodplain and then contracts back into the river. There's continuity upstream and downstream with migratory fisheries, migratory fish providing the basis for the world's largest freshwater fishery measured at a basin scale. And of course there's continuity in terms of ecology and livelihood. Now, one of the defining features of dams and what they do in terms of the socio-environmental transformation that we're interested in is they fragment each of these. Dams will fragment the connection, for example, between the river and its floodplain by doing what engineers often set out to do by building dams, by evening out the hydrological curve, by reducing floods in the wet season, by reducing droughts in the dry season. It means in many places the river no longer spills over its banks. In the case of the most productive fishery in the Mekong Basin, that of the Tonle Sap Lake in Cambodia, it means that the area that's intermittently wetted and dried is greatly reduced, and all the modelling, scientific modelling, shows that this will have immense impacts on the size of the fishery. And then at a much more local level, we see disappearance of river basin, dry season river basin gardens, and so on, and so on. So we see this kind of fragmentation. We see fragmentation of the river between upstream and downstream. Before the Mekong mainstream dams are built as planned, about 55% of the length of the lower Mekong river will be end up as stillwater lakes, as a cascade stillwater lake. So again, immense impacts on not only in terms of those who have to move their homes, but also those who depend on fisheries that are no longer supported because of the change of the river ecology. So we see also the fragmenting effects of dams in a material sense. The question is then, well, how do we move then from fragmentation to rupture? That's a question in my mind in thinking about what I've written about before, and many others have been concerned about before. And here I think that the components of the project are going to be potentially very helpful in moving beyond the materiality of fragmented livelihoods, fragmented ecologies, to understanding the responses, the networked responses that we'll be looking at, and also then the governance implications of those. How we then bring in or maintain ideas of fragmentation, I guess we'll have to think through. But this is really just a reflection on the movement from one set of cognate concepts into perhaps another level of thinking and upscaling of our thinking. And I'll finish by just also reflecting on the idea that we're looking at, we talked about the governance implications in terms of what they mean in the increasingly authoritarian states of the region. The last couple of days we've talked a lot about that. But I think it's also important for us to bear in mind that if we take a critical geopolitics approach to understanding these relationships, we need to think beyond both above and below the level of the nation state. We need to think, for example, of the various regional constructions, like the Greater Mekong region, like the Mekong River Basin, like the Lancang-Mekong Cooperation Framework that China is now very much behind. But we also need to look at the new governance arrangements that come with privatized infrastructure, privatized dams, the new what some see as spaces of governance or islands of governance that come with projects like those that Steve's been working on, the Turn Hinborn or the well-known Upturn 2 project, and what that implies. Perhaps again reflecting back to Christian, to your talk about thinking about government or state being produced not just in the conventional ways that we understand it, but authority